important to look at the prospects and the potentials of the non-oil sector and what it means to Nigeria. I have a colleague, he's a senior business analyst with Daily Trust newspapers, and he's also the chairman planning committee of the 2019 FICAN Conference just concluded that focused on the theme unlocking opportunities in Nigeria's non-oil sector. He joins me live in the studio to talk more on this. Thank you very much, Michael, for coming on the show.
The delight is mine.
Yes, let's start this way. It was really interesting at the conference because the non-oil sector being very important at this time. Government is shifting away from proceeds from oil. But let's look at the major talking points there. What would you say was our take-home as journalists?
Basically, I think it's the realization that we need to quicken this journey. Every day we wake up to major announcements around the world as regards to falling oil prices. I think we're a bit lucky because every time it appears as if we are going to hit rock bottom, something else happens in the world and it bounces back. But it will not always be like that. The reality, even for major oil giants in the world, is to shift away from oil and diversify your sources of income so that you are not bothered, you know, as it were, with development like that at the Global Forum. So that realization was driven home. And there was also the need for us to begin to even look at the whole concept of diversification differently. As we were told by analysts and experts who graced the occasion, we need to even start the whole talk about non-oil diversification from the oil industry itself. You know, the need to begin to develop the petrochemical industry, the fertilizer blending plants, that would in turn support our agric industries, support manufacturing with the kind of gas, cheap power that they need, you know, to sustain production and make them competitive, especially as we open up the African borders to trading among ourselves. There was also the need, as we were told, and rightly so, for us to also begin to rethink that whole concentration around just agri products as the only means of diversification. We were told that we have the potentials to do as much as $20 billion in IT, and that's huge. I mean, if you begin to explore topics around telemedicine, topics around e-education, I mean, you can't imagine how much Nigerians spend taking voucher classes from universities across the world. What will stop our education system from developing capacity to this level? So that seated in Lagos here, if you have a niche program you want to take in Sokoto, you don't have to hit the roads. You know.
To me, I look at it like government needs to do a lot to make this work. That's because right. Now at all meetings, which we all attend most times together, it's now a normal word. Everybody talks about diversification, diversification. Where do you think government really needs to start from?
There's a whole lot government can do. But I agree with you, we don't have to look at it as an issue that the federal government alone has to deal with. Now, we need a comprehensive, if you like, a holistic approach to this whole talk about diversification. Individual ministries, departments, and agencies of government needs to come up with their own concept note on how to key into the whole larger talk of diversification. So I have just spoken about education. Education has the capacity to be a major source of foreign direct investments for Nigeria. All those huge campuses you have from Ife to UNN and to Sokoto, why are they not attracting students from the West African sub-region? So perhaps they need to retool their curriculums. Perhaps they need to look at what they are offering. If you are not offering subjects that would serve the need of the future, that would serve the need of the industry, why would anybody want to come here? So that's the first question. Why do people even go outside to school? If you are not offering anything competitive, why would they ever want to consider what you are doing? You know, so that has the potentials to do a whole lot. You want to talk about sport. There are about 12,000 expatriates, you know, around over 2,000 clubs in the world. We all sit here every day and we hear those mighty numbers around sign-on of players.
Wow.
What are we doing with all those stadiums we have in Nigeria? That has the potentials to create jobs for young minds that are loitering away around the bridges and begging and selling bread. If you have a way of tabulating how many kilometers that boy runs on the 3rd Milan Bridge selling gala, if you put that into productive use, that should be earning this country some money. Now, in that whole sport gamut, there are potentials for sports science. There are potentials for psychologists. There are potentials for lawyers who want to go into contract arrangements and all of that. There are huge potential for a lot of people who want to play in that government, including food science, because that is where the world is moving at. We used to be giants in volleyball, in basketball, in weightlifting, in football, and all of that. All that feeds the way, including the special sports. So imagine we are able to draw up a program for the sport industry as a way of diversifying the economy. That's a multi-billion-naira potential industry on its own. So every ministry, department, and agency of government needs to articulate its own role in the global, in our national concept of diversification. It's not something the federal government can drive alone. And including the states, every day we shout about their lack of capacity to pay the basic minimum wage. And we are sitting, the 36 states are sitting on about 80 million arable hectares of land. These 36 states are sitting on about 35 commercially viable mineral resources. Why is everybody looking to oil?
So one way or the other, I see it like we really need to look inwards.
Absolutely.
And it brings back to me that made in Nigeria drive.
Absolutely.
Because we need to
Absolutely.
practice what we preach.
So you talked about what role government can play.
Yes.
Essentially, beside the everyday talk around infrastructures of road and transport, government is a major enabler in all of these things. I know there was a presidential order that has not crystallized properly. If the government is the major spender in the economy, the government must also spend in a way to regenerate the economy, to inflate the economy. So it saddens me as a journalist, for instance, when I have to look at the news and I see state governors buying foreign brand vehicles for House of Assembly, for the police, and there are people struggling within the economy to produce the same things. Oh, come on. Now, we are talking about furnitures for the Senate. Is there a way of tracking, should that money be spent, to ensure that it is spent on Nigerian-made furnitures? Because this whole thing has a way of crystallizing. You know, like one professor told me, a professor of economics, we all rise and fall together with the economy. So if the economy does well, for instance, for TVC, it means more commercial activity will happen here. It means you can employ more hands, you can buy more equipment, you can expand into other areas. That is how it works for everybody. So if you purchase or patronize this made in Nigeria, you have empowered a Nigerian company to pay more tax. You have empowered the Nigerian households by people who make their living from there. That way, they will also empower the schools of their kids. They will empower their environment. They will buy from the Nigerian market. It's a vicious cycle. So the earlier we understand these things, the better for all of us.
The big one again, part of the non-oil sector arrangement, taxation. Taiwo Idile was there to really break that down, and you gave him the opportunity to really talk about that. He was here yesterday to talk about this. Now, let's look at taxation and this aggressive move by the FRS, and we are still over in GDP. Tax ratio is still 6%. How do you, what do you make of this? How does it come to you?
I think it's a big dilemma. The argument largely around the whole concept of taxation is the economy is already belabored. What we are supposed to do is to increase the tax net and not to increase the burden on a willing horse. I think the argument around the tax experts is, if you run a GDP of close to 500 billion, if you can do anything to grow that economy by 5%, whatever you will get as tax return from that 5% is bigger than whatever a 2.5% VAT would offer you. And they made the point, by offering simple statistics that we can relate with. We have seen the numbers, the proposed numbers for the budget, but we know last year, which was one of the best years in our collections, that the state had a budget of about 10 trillion. From collections from VAT amounted to about 1.1 trillion. Their federally allocated revenues amounted to about 3.6 trillion, thereabout. Total revenues amounted to about 4.5 trillion, leaving a deficit of about 5.5 trillion. So if you grow or improve tax, imagine that you are even able to collect as much as last year, because usually the global trend is whenever you raise tax, compliance drop. But imagine that we can even average what we did last year. We will be talking about 550 billion naira in additional VAT. If you have a 5.5 trillion deficit, what does 550 billion exactly does to that pool? And not to talk about the fact that this entire money does not go to to the sector. I mean, 50% go to the state, another 35% to the local government. So it really does amount to nothing other than straining people who are already contending with how to provide power for their business, contending with high turnover rate of broken down vehicles because of poor roads to either get in raw materials or get out finished goods. So that's huge. So the question really is, what comes before the other? Why are you so interested in raising taxes before you provide incentive for businesses to grow? At the end of the day, you will need the businesses to meet the obligations. You meet your obligations to the people. The much talked about employment, non-employment we talked about today, it's not something the government can take away. You will need businesses to grow, to take people off the streets. So at this point, what is more important to you, the growth of your business or to belabor them with extra
It's
tax?
getting very interesting and we're almost running out of time. Let's touch on the Economic Growth and Recovery Plan. This is another document that's supposed to help activate diversification of the Nigerian economy. What do you make of this document? Beautiful document, beautiful projections. How implementable?
Beautiful document, yes, but it also speaks to some of the challenges we have always had. So we listen to different agencies of government speak, and they speak in contradiction of what even the document says. Oh, yeah? And that is why the document would say by the end of 2019 we'll grow by 3.5%, and the reality is nowhere close. Because even the ministries, agencies, and parastatals of government do not even understand their role in that document. It feels like a document that is designed, articulated, and resident in the Ministry of Planning. I think it is time we also wake up to the reality everywhere in the world. The way documents are developed everywhere in the world is a bottom-top approach. People must take ownership of what they want to do and how they want to do it. It makes no sense to design all that concept from the top and you spend 4 years struggling to get people to even understand what role they have to play in that document.
So before I let you go, one word, journalist. As financial journalists, we are financial journalists. What role do we play in all of this?
What more can you do more than what you are doing? Advocacy, putting these issues on the top burner, as we are doing, and making sure that it sinks. Remember, like I said in the beginning, we all rise and fall with this economy. There has to be a country before we practice. And that is why this bothers us. I mean, we all know how many of our extended relatives call us every day to provide one kind of support or the other. If there is a system that can meet those basic needs, it will help you get a better life.
Sunday Michael Ogu, my colleague, thank you very much. As a senior business analyst with Daily Trust, thank you for joining us on the show today. We're sure to have you again.
The gratitude is my